Thank you. You're welcome.
Hello, can you hear me? Hi, hola. I'm going to do the session in English, but I don't know if someone actually rather have me talk in Spanish or something, just let me know and I'll translate whatever concepts I might use. As written here, my idea for this 15 minutes that I've got with you is actually to share some of the main tensions that we've seen in all of our clients, the ones that we're working. We've sort of wanted to narrow it down to two different areas. We wanted to narrow it down into, into fast-moving consumer goods, gran consumo in Spanish. So we do work for clients that you may know, like for instance, Coca-Cola or Danone or Mau San Miguel. We do work for a lot of companies that do fast-moving consumer goods and lifestyle brands and companies. Everything I'm going to share with you in the next 15 minutes actually stems directly from the experience that we've got doing strategy and innovation projects. So when I was invited to come here and talk to you guys, I thought, first of all, I've got 15 minutes, so I'd rather be very concise. And I actually wanted to give you some of the main tensions, some of the main issues that some of our clients are actually worried about, and we believe that sharing this with you might provide you with inspiration to actually be able to apply it, actually be able to incorporate this in your strategies or in your propositions. So I've got 5 of them. We've mapped tensions for the past 10 years, so we've got about 50 of those tensions, and I actually wanted to share 5 of them with you that I think that are probably the most relevant for your environment. Y se produjo un error. Oh, no hay tensiones. So there are no tensions. Everything is perfect. Hello? Sorry. There are no tensions. Perfect. Great. So, I don't know. While we wait, do you want me to sync? Or no, here they are. Here they are. So actually, the first one that I wanted to share with you, it is very much based on this idea that most of our clients tend to think about frameworks of work very much based on categories and occasions. I mean, this is something that has been normally has been a tradition for the past 15, 20 years. We see most of our clients actually developing decision-making processes based on categories and occasions. And we have seen that actually one of the main changes in terms of trying to solve tensions from these clients is actually moving to a framework based on needs and motivations. Let me put an example to you. Let me set an example. When those of you who are from Barcelona, and actually, you go out after these sessions and you go for, el tardeo, and you go and have a drink, normally what you want to do is, I want to have it, my need state is, I might go for a beer, but how many of you will actually have a beer? Not very many. I mean, actually needs and occasions are actually shifting away most of the pure players in some of the main categories in fast-moving consumer goods. So this shift, this real shift that's happening in terms of how consumers approach different categories and needs is one of the main tensions that we have been mapping for the past 15 years in a lot of fast-moving consumer goods. The other main tension that we thought is a direct opportunity, hold on, let me move on. Veo mucha gente haciendo fotos, so I'll just move on. The other main tension that we perceive, it's probably the most relevant, and it's actually being one of the most complicated, one of the most difficult in some of our clients, is actually stop thinking about lumping segments. I mean, the way that you actually do the market segmentation, the way that you actually try to find your audiences is now much more based on a community-based approach than just trying to lump segments together. This might sound very common sense. This might sound very much like, yeah, of course, but you would be surprised as how few big companies, big brands, global brands actually think in terms of communities. I mean, you normally tend to think, oh, I don't know, like this soda drink is for a Z generation. There's no such thing as Generation Z. I mean, there's a number of different motivations, there's a number of different realities, there's a number of different ideals and motivations, and actually this have to be lumped up, not in segments, but in communities. I mean, addressing communities is turning out to be one of the most difficult and most challenging projects for most of fast-moving consumer goods and lifestyle brands that are not used to talk about communities. They're not used about having to address communities that might belong to different age groups, that might be located in different regions, that might have different needs, that might have different motivations, and being able to actually talk to communities is becoming one of the key tensions, and I believe that you guys, from a technological digital perspective, are probably the ones that you're going to help us solve some of these tensions. The third of them, and it's very much based on those of you who know what we do, I mean, we do a lot of work with luxury brands. So, I mean, we are quite familiar with luxury and premium lifestyle brands. And some of the main, or a very big main tension that you might, guys, want to consider is how premiumness is changing. I mean, the way that the idea of premiumness is evolving. I mean, premium used to be all about aspire to be something. It used to be based on the idea of aspiration. It used to be an expression of power. It used to be something that there's scarcity, that is very regulated, that it's very canonized, that it's very established. This is changing completely. I mean, the idea of the contemporary proposition of what premium is based on the ability to inspire. I mean, it's not on the ability to build something that has to be aspirational per se, but the ability that premium has to actually inspire us. This is a huge opportunity for all content and activation propositions that are basically aimed to creating these pools of inspiration that help brands permeate into consumers that do not at all identify themselves with an idea of premiumness based on this aspiration, very 20th century, very old way of what premium has been established. You can see this in a lot of different categories, not only in luxury, not only in what we would consider lifestyle premium brands, but you can see that a lot in what like fast-moving consumer goods are doing. You see now, for instance, a category like coffee. The most premium expression of what coffee stands for today, it's not a bling-bling proposition that borrows from codes from traditional fashion, but the most premium expression of what coffee is today borrows directly from a craft environment, from what crafters, what makers, what people that work with human propositions, with subjectivity, with imperfection, those are the sources, those are the pools in which contemporary premium stands for. And this, again, it's a huge tension for a lot of brands that would position themselves price-wise or proposition-wise on the cusp of the pyramid and would try to aim for the more premium, high-spender consumer, that it's no longer activated and it's no longer interested to a very traditional idea of premium based on the potential that aspiration might have. Likewise, in the idea of what's basic and what's valuable. I mean, the idea of value. I mean, normally, the idea of value, the idea of something that is cheap, the idea that it's something that it's on promotion. I love you guys, all of you taking pictures. Let me just stand like this. I mean, thank you. Used to be based on the idea of actually punishment or subtraction. When you actually go to a high discount supermarket, not anymore, some of them are learning their lessons, but when you go to a very sort of basic supermarket, I live in London, when I go to certain sort of hard discounts stores in London, they almost need to be dirty. I mean, they have to be punishing you. I mean, they're punishing you because you're not allowed to spend more money, so you are going to be treated, has to be dirty, it has to be in bold, flashy numbers, and it has to work almost in the idea of subtraction. The idea of basic and the idea of value is, from my humble perspective, experiencing one of the most interesting changes in the past 20 years, 30 years, which is based on the idea of empathy. I mean, again, the idea of understanding that being on the basic of the pyramid, being on the more functional needs, being on the business of solving the more functional needs does not mean that you cannot work with values and attributes like, in this case, empathy. And the final one that I wanted to share with you is this need to actually appropriate new formal codes. I mean, I'm sure you've been very much aware of this. I mean, there's been a huge wave of decanonizing and recanonizing concepts that were incredibly established and were part of this sort of like big stories that we all learned at school and that we have been using and explaining and telling stories about that. Ideas like, for instance, beauty, ideas like, for instance, seduction, ideas like, for instance, identity. There's a whole of new ideas and concepts that are being redefined. And again, this poses a huge challenge for brands and companies that have been dealing with very traditional, very heteronormative, very patriarchal, very established idea of one of the most used formal expressions. So, 5 big tensions for you to consider. These are the things that actually worry most of our clients. If you guys are able to solve this, just drop me an email, please, and we will partner doing projects for big companies. Because think about needs and motivations. You're no longer thinking about categories. You're no longer thinking vertically. You're thinking completely horizontally. Stop thinking on lumping different segments and start thinking about communities, thinking about this, again, a huge challenge for brands and organizations. Deal with inspiration, not with aspiration. As a brand, you have to be able to inspire. No matter if you're on the cusp of the pyramid or you're on the basic of the pyramid, your role with your consumers is to inspire. I mean, you will succeed as long as you're able not to impose an emotion, but as long as you're able to offer a plethora of emotions. Create a framework in which your consumers are able to work for different numbers with a wide variety and a wide number of emotions. Work with empathize, and do not be afraid of actually decanonize or recanonize the topics and the formal expressions and how things look, how things seem, how things appear, and how things are being explained. So, thank you very much. Thank you.